just go with the overview and then I'll start with the actual coding part. Okay, and we'll code everything from a scratch, every component from a scratch. ठीक है, we'll start with just one code. ठीक है, एक चीज याद रखना. ठीक है, you guys know Thomas Alva Edison? कितने लोगों को पता है थॉमस अल्वा एडिसन? अल्वा एडिसन नहीं पता है? हाँ पता है ना, वही तो मतलब. ठीक है, हु इन्वेंटेड द बल्ब, राइट? सो उससे एक बार पूछा गया था. ठीक है, someone asked कि he failed 999 times, ऐसा बोला जाता है, राइट? और 99 times whatever. ठीक है, someone asked कि how are you feeling after inventing the bulb in 1000 attempt या 999 attempt, right? So he said कि I'm not happy because I found a way to invent the bulb. ठीक है, I'm happy, ठीक है, because I discovered 999 ways in which bulb can't be made. ठीक है, तो सिर्फ आउटकम हमेशा मैटर नहीं करता है, वो जर्नी मैटर करती है. ठीक है, कि तुमने उसके लिए कितना स्ट्रगल किया है, दैट मैटर्स. और एग्जैक्टली दैट आई वांट एवरीवन ऑफ यू टू बी. ठीक है, फेल हो गए नहीं चलेगा, कोई परफेक्टली फाइन. ठीक है, बट जितना तुम रिसर्च करोगे उतनी नई चीजें सीखोगे. ठीक है, पहले फेल होना ज्यादा बेटर है. ठीक है, रेदर देन जा करके तुम अपने आप को बहुत स्मार्ट बता रहे हो कि हाँ ठीक है मैं ये कर सकता हूँ, सब चलेगा, एंड देन अल्टीमेटली जो तुम्हारा जहां पे तुमको जाना है वहां पे यू वोंट परफॉर्म बेटर. उससे बेटर है कि तुम पहले स्ट्रगल करो. स्ट्रगल करने से तुम्हारा एक्सपीरियंस बेटर होगे. अ काम सी नेवर मेक्स अ स्किल्ड सेलर. ठीक है, शांत समुद्र में अच्छे नाविक नहीं बनते हैं. ठीक है, चलो बहुत हो गया, अब स्टार्ट करेंगे कोडिंग. कूल, यू गाइस कैन सी माय स्क्रीन, राइट? अच्छा, you don't know. Okay, नहीं, so okay, I'll explain, Sunny. See, whenever I'll teach something, I'll try to speak in English, but whenever we do some normal communication chit chat kind of a thing, then I prefer to use Hindi. But I'll try my best to mix both of the language, and I generally try to do both of the things, mix both the languages. Okay, but teaching I'll specifically do in English. ठीक है, so there won't be any complaint on the teaching side कि sir why are you teaching Hindi, because I do respect all the language and they are from different backgrounds, so I do understand that. Okay, cool. So let's start with this. Everyone created this session app, right? Yesterday we tried to create the session app and I asked you guys to do the setup for the Node.js and create a simple React application. ठीक है, now we have went through the file structure for our React application. We have gone through each and every file, this public folder, node modules, src, and every file, right? So the first and foremost important file is our index.html, right? Index.html, where we have an element called root that we have changed to root1 to show how that actually works out. And we have realized, I'll again change it to root. Okay, and we have realized that the element are injected by this particular file, right? So here we have something like, it is react.render, right? Where we are saying key get the element by the id root and try to inject this component, right? Try to inject this component means try to render this component out in that particular id field, right? Now we'll go to that component, right? So we have some code here in that component. Let's try to get rid of this entire code. Okay, now we don't have any code in this particular component, right? Now let's try creating some code in that component, right? So first of all, we know about React, right? A React component returns a single element, right? So no matter what code we write, we need to wrap it under a single element, right? So for that, what we can do, we'll wrap it in a single element, right? That's what we have wrapped it in a div. Then after that, let's suppose start creating something, right? Let's suppose I want to display a hero, right? Let's suppose I want to display some text on a page. So it will look like this. H1. Okay. Okay. Hero name, let's suppose We'll take some Indian hero. Okay. Now, so we have got rid of this entire code in this app component, and we are trying to display just two fields. That is the hero and hero name and the hero country, right? Superhero name and superhero country. Okay. And let's run our app and see how it works. Okay. Okay, I guess it's already running. Okay.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Sir, is it necessary to always on the internet while we are creating and starting this React app?
No. So first time when you are doing the npm create, npx create react app, right? At that time, net needs to be turned on. But after that, whatever the code that you write, for that you don't need the internet connectivity,
Okay, sir.
because that is running in your local development server. That is provided the webpack dev server where it runs. That's what we are. This URL is this one. I'll get this screen here. Okay, and you guys can see, right? We have displayed Krish and India, right? And this is running on a local host 3000. 3000 is the port number, and the local host is our server. Local host means our system, right? Our system local host server. Okay. Now let's again go back to the code, right? Generally, what we have seen in React, right? Components are the building block of a React application, right? And we want to write a component as small as possible, right? Right? So writing this h1, this h2 tag in here doesn't make sense. So let's try and create a new component, right? So we'll create a new component, right? So for creating a new component, what we need to do? So we just need to go to this src, right? We want to create this component here. Okay. Create a folder, create a file. Let's suppose we name it hero.js. Okay. Simply go ahead. Okay. Take this code from here. Okay. So what we did, we copy pasted the exact code. Okay. Just change the name from app to hero, right? Then this is our hero component, right? And here we can display this hero name and the hero country. Okay. And let's just get rid of this, right? Now, if we do this, right, is it going to display something on screen? What will happen now? Anyone wants to take any guess? What will happen on the screen now? So still Chris and hero and hero name will be displayed blank, right? Yeah, correct. So the screen will have no content. Why no content? Because only the app component is displayed in the screen in that root element, right? But there is no content written inside this app, right? It's going to be as empty div. That's what we can see it here. We'll do the inspect element. Okay. Going to the body. Okay. We have the root. I'll just highlight. See, we have the div ID root. And after that, we have a empty div. See, we have an empty div, right? That means there is no content inside that. Now we want to render our content inside that, right? So what we can do, we can import our hero component. Okay, import. Okay, from the same directory, what we need to do, see hero, right? And we just need to display our hero component, right? Correct. So that's just, it's just a shorthand notation for the displaying the component. You write the component name just as a tag, and it is the self-ending tag. That's what it is ending it here. We don't need to write hero starting and the hero close. Okay. Now hero is not defined. Why hero is not defined? Go to the hero. So base. No.
Sir, I think semicolon on number 3 is missing.
Where? Ah, this one, but इससे नहीं होगा प्रॉब्लम. Seven hero is not defined. जैसे कि on the keywords to learn more. So,
Hello. Hello.
yeah, good.
So there is required one semicolon on line number 11 in app.js. Yeah, over here.
No, we have now. This is the function. It should be good, right? Not this.
So is it necessary on line number 10 or
What?
line number 9?
Line number 9, it is required. The component is like the bracket will start, and where the return is ending, there you need to put the semicolon, and then there will be the final bracket.
Okay.
Mm. What exactly is the problem?
Sir, in here hero.js, we have to create import React from React.
That will not should be. Oh, that is exactly the same.
Capital letter React.
This R should be kept.
Yes.
No, but, just try to get rid of this. Where we have done it. This is defined correctly. Okay, export default app.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
I think on line third, you need to add import hero.js from hero.js. Yeah. From, I think from also you need to add. Just like number one, line number one, just like line number one.
We are missing this input. Yeah, so we'll just get rid of this again. So this import was incorrect, where we are importing like the CSS, but we need to import which component we need to import and from where. Now it's fine. Okay. So now we have rendered our hero component inside a app component, right? That means our hero component is inside that app. So now we have a central component called app, and inside that we have a hero component. Now, let's suppose if we want to display multiple heroes, right? So what we can do, either we can create multiple hero component like this, one for the Spider-Man, one for the Shaktiman, and so on. Or else what we can do, we can reuse the component. And that what exactly is the feature of the React, that you want to reuse the component as much as possible. Okay. So for reusing the component, what we can do, we can just try printing 3 components back to back. Okay. So what it will do, it will display the same name again and again, right? So what exactly is the thing here? We don't want this, right? We want other heroes to be printed. So for that, what we can do, we need to pass on some property from this component to the other component, right? We need to pass on the property from this app component to hero component, right? So that at least while displaying this, it will know that which property it needs to display, right? A name and a country, right? Correct? मेरे पास एक component है, right? App. After inside that we have displayed the hero component, right? Now we need to display that hero component, right? So we have displayed that hero component. Now we need to give the hero the name and the country, right? So what we can do, we can pass on some property from parent component to child component, right? Right. So here we have displayed Chris, right? We need to change it to something like Chris, then Shaktiman, and then something else, right? So we'll do like that. Let's create another component. Okay. Same code. Right. So what we have done, we have created one more component for the Shaktiman, right? For the another superhero, we have created a separate component altogether, right? And we are adding that component here as well. Now the problem is, let's suppose if you want to add another superhero, right? If you want to display another superhero, right? So what we'll do, we need to again create a new component, right? But do you think is it going to be a scalable solution that for each and every superhero you are going to create a new component every time? Okay. Anyone who thinks ki yes, we can create multiple components as we require. Anyone who thinks ki yeah, we can create can't we create new component in the same file? Yes, we definitely can. That right? Okay. Oh, so you are saying creating a separate component in the same file. Exactly, that's the same thing, right? Whether you want to create the component in the same file or a different file, it's gonna mean the same, right? Is it going to change something for you? Right? Any other thing, right? It's not going to be scalable, right? Because in production or while working on a project, you won't know, right, how many superheroes you want to display, right? You will get that from some list, right? And you won't be knowing ki, so you say as much as company can create every small element, right? For each and every small element, you need to create a component. In this case as well, if you want, you can segregate the hero component into two parts. But try to create components in such a way that is very reusable, right? Like this entire Shaktiman block, right? The entire hero block, right, is going to be reused at multiple places. New component in the same file will work now. Yes, new component in the same file will work. Definitely it will work. But why to create the different component in the same file when we can create the different component in different file, right? If they are related in some way, right? We can create class of superhero. Yes, class based component will come after that. After the function based component will go to the class based component. Okay. You want to create multiple component in the same class only when the components are related, right? And they are very small. That takes more memory. Yes, creating in multiple classes, multiple files takes some extra memory, but that is not something you need to worry about because almost it is going to be same. Plus, if you write, let's suppose 5-10 component in the same file, it is going to be unreadable. So if the components are very small, then try to put it in same file. And if they are related, let's try to segregate it in multiple files. Okay. Now, this solution is not going to work, right? Why? Because for each and every superhero, we can't create our new component. For that, what we can do, we need to pass on some property from our parent component to child component. So for that, let's try. What all properties this particular superhero has? Name and a country, right? So we'll pass on some name. Name is equal to, what was the Chris? Okay. Then okay, we have passed on this particular name, right? But if we'll go back to our browser, do you think is it going to change anything? Is it going to change anything? Okay, let's suppose we change it to something like this. CC Chacha Chaudhary. Okay. So if we change it to CC, do you think is it going to change anything on the screen for now? No, right? Because we have not used this property anywhere, right? Although we are passing this property, but we are not using this property anywhere, right? So the child component need to be changed to use this property. So where we'll go? We'll go to our hero component. It is receiving some attribute from its parent. Okay. Okay. Now if we'll see, the name is changed to CC, right? That means the property that we are passing from there, it is correctly displaying here. Same way, in the props, we have other field what? It is country, right? Now, if we'll go to this, right, it is correctly display CC and India, right? Now we need to display Shaktiman, right? So do you really think we are going to need the Shaktiman component now? Why can't we use the same hero component? We'll use this hero component. This time pass on some different property, name as Shaktiman. Country as India, okay. And let's get rid of this component, okay. See, CC India Shaktiman. Okay, I'll change the name as well. This time. Shaktiman. Okay, right? So whenever we are passing this particular property, right, it is getting received by the hero component, and the hero component is using those properties to display the name, display the properties, right? Use those property in their component. So this is the syntax. Yeah, comma is required here for the return. Whenever we have this return method, right? For that, we require the comma. Okay. Now, whenever we, so it's clear, right? We have a central component. Props are parameter. Yes, it acts as a parameter for this particular child component. See this? We have changed the props to some other name, right? But still, it is correctly getting displayed. So this act as one of the parameter, right? That this particular method receives, right? That is passed by the parent component. Now, let's revisit the definition that we have seen for our component yesterday. So what are the components? Anyone remember the yesterday definition that we have seen for the component? What is a component in React? Anyone try to unmute yourself and just speak?
Hello.
Similar to
Yeah.
that is similar to function
Similar to function?
or block of code, sir, that
Mhm.
can you reuse any time of our code.
Correct, kind of true. So definitely, so components are the building blocks of React application, right? Which uses properties to pass information to other component, right? To the child component. JavaScript class and function which return UI element. Exactly. It is nothing but a JavaScript function, right? A building block of React. It's a JavaScript function or a class. We'll see what a typical class-based component looks like. For now, we are only having this functional component. And yesterday, we have not seen the properties, right? We have not seen how the component passes the property to other component. Now, one more line is added that the component passes properties to the child component, right? Now, one interesting thing about React, right? And this is one typical, sometimes it is asked in the interview as well. Think about this. And React is said to be one-way data binding. So one-way data binding, what is the exact meaning of one-way data binding? Anyone knows about this concept, one-way data binding? Okay, देखो. In React, we can pass the properties from the parent component to child component, right? Because we are passing the properties from here, right? From this component app. To which component we are passing? We are passing to hero. Why we are calling this hero component as the child component of this? Is hero a child component of app? Yes or no? Correct? hero is a child component of app. Why? Because it is rendered inside that app component. We can see that from here as well. We'll go back to body, right? We have a root element, right? This is the div. This is the div for app. And then finally, we have the div for hero 1 and hero 2, right? So hero 1 and hero 2, that text is zoomed, right? Whenever I'm scrolling to an element, that text is zoomed, right? Yeah. So hero 1 and hero 2, this div and this div, right, are the child component of this div, which is nothing but a parent div of app. So that's what in React, data can be passed from only parent component to child component. Okay. Is there any some mechanism by which we can pass the data back from child component to parent component? Which screen you want to zoom?
Sir, we use in Java like polymorphism.
Okay. Polymorphism. How we can use polymorphism here? It's not exactly the polymorphism concept, right? Yes, that's what I don't want to bring the alien terms here. Polymorphism is something specific to the higher level programming language. So mostly we talk about this in C, C++, Java, those languages. Use extends keyword. Okay. So where you want extend keyword to be placed, and what will happen if we use the extend keyword? Rahul, you want to talk about that? Inheritance. So inheritance, right? What is inheritance? Extend is nothing but inheritance, right? So inheritance is what? Inheriting the properties from a parent to a child, right? Or it is a vice versa. ऐसा होता है क्या कि पिता takes the property from the child? Inheritance is one way, right? From parent to child. It's not the other way from child to parent, right? So in React, we can pass the data from parent component to child component only. There is no mechanism of passing the child to parent, right? Now, and that is exactly one-way data binding is. All other language UI front-end framework. Okay. So yeah, so all the like Angular and other, right, they have the two-way data binding enabled, but React specifically went ahead with the one-way data binding. Now, one interesting thing, there are scenarios when child want to communicate to parent, right? But there is no mechanism, right? In real world, how a child can communicate with the father, right? The emotions are well understood by the parents, right? By mother and the father, right? So by that mechanism, even the child can't speak, but still the parents can understand. In the same way, in React, there should be some mechanism by which the child component can talk to the parent component. It is one of the disadvantage of React. It is, but it is handled in a different way. The React is designed in such a way that they have kept the data binding only to parent data flow from parent to child. They have specifically mandated that, yeah, you are not going to pass on the data from the child to parent. So this is specifically designed in some way, and few people actually like it. So will not call it a total disadvantage. This is the way that the React was designed. Okay. So we pass the data from parent to child, but whenever we want to, let's suppose child want to communicate with the parent, right? How he can communicate? He can communicate via something similar. What if we do, so give some error, okay? Let's try here. So what you want, how you want to pass the data, right? Here you don't have any access to the app component, right? So if we'll do like this, app, okay, and we'll pass on some component, some properties here, right? Then it will eventually mean that this app component is also the child component of the Shaktiman or that component, right? Because you are writing it inside there. So matlab, in a way you are saying कि जो बाप है वही बेटा है, जो बेटा है वही बाप है, ठीक है? So this is especially not the correct way. The UI is designed in such a way. You need to start with a top level container, right? Break down into multiple individual smaller pieces, okay? And then start designing the components for that, okay? And then build the entire UI component. And data will be passed on by the parent component to the child component. Whenever the child component want to talk to the parent component, it can do so via something called a callback method. What is callback method? Callback method is nothing but यहाँ पे क्या करेंगे? Callback method का बहुत सारा मतलब होता है, right? But here what specifically it will mean? The parent will pass, right? The parent will pass a method as a property. Okay. Parent will pass a method as a property to the child component, right? So अगर एक method child component को pass होगा, right? That means the child component will receive it as a props or properties, right? And whenever you access that property, right, it is going to do what? You have passed a method from a parent component to a child component, right? Now, whenever the child component will try to access that property, what will happen? It will eventually access that method passed by the parent component, right? Yes or no? Parent is passing some method to child component. Child component will receive that as a props. Whenever the child component will access that prop, it will eventually access that method of the parent, right? And when the child can access a method of a parent, it can pass on the data to that method, right? It can pass on the parameters to that method, right? Like failed lookup. What is failed lookup? See, you have a parent component. Okay. Please don't confuse with Excel knowledge. Okay. See, okay, I'm not good at Excel, so I don't know that concept failed lookup. Lookups, I hardly know. There is something called VLOOKUP or something like that, but I've never used like how to use. I still not able to figure out how that works. Okay. Okay. Now you have a parent component. Imagine it like this. Parent component generally passes the props or property to child component. ये clear है? Clear till here, right? Parent component passes the property to child component that the child component uses. This is straightforward, clear, right? Now, whenever parent wants some data from child, so what it will do? It will say, hey, take this method, take my method as one of the parameter, right? And that method will be received as a property to the child, right? And whenever the child component will access that property, what it will do? It will eventually going to call the method of the parent. It can pass on some parameter there, right? And by that, parent will be notified about the change, or parent will be notified about whatever the child wants to communicate with the parent. Got this? By using this is a keyword that is so powerful, right? This is not only used for this. this क्या हो रहा है? This is a very powerful keyword जिसका अलग-अलग places पे अलग-अलग use होता है, right? For this, it is straightforward prop passing. Cool. Okay. And how you guys generally, after going from the session, generally how you guys go ahead and revise the things? Do you guys go ahead and visit any documentation, React documentation, or any of the? I'll talk about the example of this. That's definitely one of the important concept that we'll take in subsequent lectures. Watching videos. What kind of videos? Try to go through this as well. See, React has this awesome documentation. Okay. Share it on GitHub. What you want me to share it on GitHub? I am not understanding, Kuldeep. This particular project. This is hardly 2 lines of code. What else? Why you want it to be on GitHub? When we'll create some project that we can put it on GitHub, but these are the very small things, right? These things should not go into GitHub. That's my understanding. Okay. See, try to go through these as well. So this will give you a structured manner of going through topics by topics. This React has some awesome documentation. And here, if you can see, right, you have the CodePen, Code Sandbox, and Stackblaze. These are the online editor that you can use. Any book recommended? Generally, I have not gone through any of the books for the React, but I'll highly recommend if you guys use Udemy. So while I was learning React, I guess past, I guess 4 or 5 years back, at that time I went ahead with one of the course from Stephen Grider, I guess, on React. So that was one of the very awesome content. So you guys, we can learn. Yeah, W3 schools also have a good content. But for React specifically, you guys can go ahead with the React documentation. They have very structured documentation. Right? For everything, they have one or the other concept, right? And every information is derived from this particular document blog only. Okay. Cool. Now, let's go back again. Again, this drawing, right? Don't draw this. How we generally draw this in Zoom? Okay. नहीं मैं पूछ नहीं रहा, मैं डिजाइन करने नहीं बोल रहा था लोगों को. I'm just asking, right? Annotation. Okay. Okay. Whoever has drawn this, just erase this. Mute annotation. कहाँ से करते हैं mute annotation? Annotate. From where we mute the annotation?
Sir, below you can see the option of security.
Inside this annotation, oh, this security. Okay. Security, and then
Not that security, sir, where there is option of participants.
participant.
Below bar.
Participant windows. Just
Participant chat and share screen.
I'm still not able to find why. Okay, रहने दो. I trust you guys. You won't draw anything. ऐसा ट्रस्ट ऐसे खतरनाक तो नहीं है? Can I trust you guys? Okay. Okay, cool. Now let's go back to the some other kind of a component. Okay. So till now we have seen what kind of a component? Function based component, right? Trust me because I don't know. Okay. Now, so till now we have seen functional component, right? Now what we need to do, we can create a class based component, right? Because till now we have seen a component is a JavaScript function or a class, right? ये प्रैक्टिस करके देख लिया सबने? ठीक है, any doubt till here? यहाँ तक कोई डाउट?
Sir, can we write many function in one file?
Can we write main function in one file? Main, right?
And more than one function can we write?
Yes, definitely. We can write multiple functions in a single file. And sometimes you will see whenever we use a functional component, right? This particular pattern you will often see in many applications that we write multiple components in a same file, multiple methods in a same file when the components are very, very small. Yeah.
And this is any rule that we have to create same file name as we have created the function, like
Nope.
you created function.
No.
Okay.
So what matters is this function name, okay, and this default export. So you are trying to say that from this particular file, we are going to import, we are going to export this particular component.
Okay, this function.
Correct. Because when you will have multiple functions in a same file, right? Then you can't have the name, right? That particular thing will not hold good. Because you can have only a single name to a file, right? But when you write multiple components or multiple functions in that file, you can't give the same file name. So what matters is this function name and whether you are exporting or not.
Okay. What if, sir, if we from index in index.js file where we rendering app?
Yeah, good.
If we render hero file,
Mhm.
then it will work same.
Yes, we can render hero directly from here.
Okay.
Now what will happen if we render the hero from here?
So whatever we wrote in hero, it will display.
Okay.
Mm,
See this?
um,
Nothing is displayed. Why? No, not because the semicolon is missing. See, you have the div tag for that. We'll go to hero. Okay. We'll go to hero. Yes. See, this is getting displayed, right? Now, just because we have not passed any properties, right? It is expecting some
Parameter.
property. This and this is passed by the properties. So you need to go to your
Yeah.
index search here, pass on those properties. Okay. So if you'll pass on this name property, okay, name will be displayed, right? But it is displaying only a single hero. Why? Because now we are not displaying the app component here, right? We are displaying only one of the hero component. So now that app component does not have any reference from this entire design, right? Matlab, that app component is never accessed from anywhere. It is not injected in any of the HTML elements, right? So as this is not injected in any of the HTML elements, it is not getting rendered. So we'll get rid
Okay,
of
sir.
this. Okay, any further question? Why sometimes we write something wrong while whole thing will vanish from host server? Rahul, can you clarify your point? Hmm. Rahul, you can unmute yourself and explain your point. Okay, no problem. Okay. Okay. What all things changes in this particular syntax? This is a typical example of a class-based component. Now, if you can see, there is no keyword called function. Yes, I'll explain each and every point. Now there is no any function keyword, right? Function keyword is not present. Earlier we were seeing that we were having this function, right? Now we are directly having this class word, right? So that eventually means it is a JavaScript class, right? This is a class is a JavaScript term, right? It's not a React term. So this is a JavaScript class, right? Why it is a component? Because it does exactly the same thing. Plus, we are trying to make it as a component, and it is extending from this React component. Okay. Clear? So this is a JavaScript class, right? Which is extending from React component, right? And it also returns a same thing. Same render method, same return, same single element returning, right? So everything is same in this as well. Just the difference is earlier it was a function component. Now it is a class-based component, right? Any doubt till here? Yes, React.component is from React library, and it is telling me that you are extending from this React.component. That means, okay, it is extending from React.component and eventually saying this is also a component which is getting some properties from the React.component. So React.component has multiple other methods, right, which helps a component run, and you are extending few of the properties from there. Simple inheritance, right? You inherit few of the properties from your parents, right? Not all the properties you want to inherit. Some properties you can modify, right? Even if you extend from your parent, right, there are some things which can do different than your parent, right? That actually is what inheritance means. You are extending all the properties from React.component, right? That means it is a component. Okay, it is getting the properties from this. Now it can modify some of the properties, and some of the properties kya hai? Render is also a method, right, inside this class. This render is a method inside a class. So there are certain methods that at least you want to override. जैसे कि render method है जो तुमको override करना ही है. This is one of the method that you need to override. Without overriding this, it won't work. Because if you don't override this render method, then what you are going to return from here, right? So this render method tells you, in this class-based component, you need to at least override one of the methods called render. And there are multiple other methods as well that you may or may not override. मतलब और भी मेथड डिफाइंड है जो अगर तुम चाहो तो इंप्लीमेंट कर सकते हो, नहीं चाहो तो इट्स ऑप्शनल, बट रेंडर इज वन ऑफ द मेथड दैट इज नेसेसरी. Is it necessary to start component name with capital letter? No. But the nomenclature is highly suggested that you need to start probably a component name with a capital letter. See, names can be anything, anywhere names can be anything, but there are certain conventions that are already being set. So try to follow those conventions. Cool. Any doubt in this overall कि क्या कैसे दिख रहा है, क्या हो रहा है यहाँ पे? वो okay, देखो. This was a function component, right? So this is just a function. Function क्या होता है? Function is a method, right, which need to which need to return something, right? That's what in this functional component you have a function with some name, and then you have just it returns something, right? In classes you have multiple properties, right, and multiple methods, and one of the method is render, and that render method, okay, is actually has the responsibility of returning the UI element that earlier it was getting returned by that simple function. So in classes you have multiple methods. One of the method is render, and that method render has the authority of returning that UI element. Instead of function, can we use classes? We can use classes. Okay, so it's just the two way of writing the component. Okay, class-based component and the functional-based component. I'll explain in which cases we use class-based component and in which cases we use the functional component. That also I'll explain. Okay, earlier there was a different segregation for them. Now that line is slightly blurred. So I'll talk about the what that will be more helpful. Yes, so I'll talk about the initial time when the React was developed, how it was there. So the idea render is a function method, right? Render is a function, or you can call it as a lifecycle method as well. People call it as a lifecycle method, but for now just understood that it is a method. Yes, render is a predefined method. So I'll explain how it was in the when React was initially developed. Like, what was the thought process? What do you think is simpler, class or function? Function. Like, everyone agrees that function is simpler than class, right? Okay, Rahul is saying class. Apart from that, everyone is saying function. Okay, Rahul, just to understand why you are saying that the class is a simple to write than function. Any pointers? एक कॉमन परसेप्शन है, देखो क्लास में क्या है, ये जो लाइन है राइट, ये both are simple to write, both are simple to write क्योंकि हम लोग अभी इतना छोटा कंपोनेंट लिख रहे हैं. When we'll write the bigger component, it will have some differences, right? But still, at least कम से कम 2 या 3 लाइन तो ज्यादा हो रहा है, राइट? इतना तो सब एग्री कर रहे हैं. Because it extend easily. Okay? कंपोनेंट का काम एक्सटेंड होना नहीं है. एक चीज सोचो, देखो जब भी तुम कंपोनेंट क्रिएट करते हो, राइट? कंपोनेंट क्या है, हम लोग बोला कि बिल्डिंग ब्लॉक ऑफ द रिएक्ट एप्लीकेशन, राइट? सो कंपोनेंट शुड बी एज स्मॉल एज पॉसिबल. जैसे कि एक छोटे से पार्ट के लिए कंपोनेंट बनेगा, तो कंपोनेंट का काम मतलब एक्सटेंड इज अ होल टुगेदर डिफरेंट कंसेप्ट फॉर रिएक्ट, राइट? जिसमें हम लोग कंपोनेंट एक्सटेंड करते हैं, बट इवेंचुअली दैट हैज नथिंग टू डू हियर. मतलब यहां उसका कोई रिलेशन नहीं है. ठीक है, विल टॉक अबाउट आगे, वो काफी आगे का कंसेप्ट है जो हम लोग रिएक्ट के कंपोनेंट को एक्सटेंड करेंगे. वर्किंग ऑफ रेंडर फंक्शन. ठीक है, रेंडर फंक्शन इज अ लाइफ साइकिल मेथड व्हिच रिटर्न्स अ यूआई एलिमेंट. सिंपल सा डेफिनेशन ये है, सिंपल सा मतलब ये है उसका. ठीक है, कि रेंडर मेथड रिएक्ट डॉट कंपोनेंट में डिफाइंड है, राइट? जो you need to override while defining your own component, while defining your own class based component, and that needs to be implemented. Cool. There are multiple other life cycle methods, जैसे constructor है, कभी सुना component did mount and other life cycle methods है. So those you may or you may not override, but render like constructor नहीं. constructor is a different method. constructor भी एक method है जो भी जनरली हम लोग ओवरराइड करते हैं, बट दैट इज स्टिल ऑप्शनल. कूल. बट रेंडर इज अ मेथड दैट यू नीड टू ओवरराइड. ओके, ठीक है. सो इतना तो क्लियर है कि क्लास बेस्ड कंपोनेंट आर जनरली have a more line of code than the functional component. That means functional component are simple. So idea भी यही था जब रिएक्ट डेवलप हुआ था, तो आइडिया भी यही था कि फंक्शनल कंपोनेंट आर द सिंपल कंपोनेंट. तो जब तुमको कोई बिजनेस लॉजिक नहीं होगा, दैट विल बी जस्ट वेनिला एलिमेंट. सो फॉर दोज केसेस यूज द फंक्शनल कंपोनेंट. बट व्हेन द कंपोनेंट इज गोइंग टू होल्ड सम प्रॉपर्टी, सम बिजनेस लॉजिक या कुछ चीजें आएगी, तो उस जगह पे विल यूज द क्लास बेस्ड कंपोनेंट. ये आइडिया था. ठीक है, तो क्लास बेस्ड कंपोनेंट में क्या था कि देयर वर मल्टीपल लाइफ साइकिल मेथड्स. ठीक है, स्टेट और भी चीजें ऐड की गई थी ताकि जब तुमको कॉम्प्लेक्स यूज केसेस आए तो उसके लिए हम लोग यूज करें क्लास बेस्ड कंपोनेंट प्रिफर होगा. एंड जब हमारे पास एकदम सिंपल प्लेन वेनिला एक यूआई एलिमेंट रिटर्न करना है, सो फॉर दोज केसेस वी विल यूज द फंक्शनल कंपोनेंट. ये आइडिया था. लेटर पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम क्या हुआ कि धीरे धीरे फंक्शनल कंपोनेंट भी इतने इनहेंस हुए. ठीक है, विद द अराइवल ऑफ द हुक्स. रिएक्ट में आगे एक हुक कंसेप्ट आएगा, हुक्स. With the arrival of the hooks, now the functional component also can have those kind of a logic inbuilt with them by using the hooks. So थोड़ा वो boundary अब blur हुआ है, but initial idea ये था. Nowadays the functional component are obviously more preferred. Generally people tend to use functional component, but if you work with any of the applications, you can find both class based component and functional component. Cool. यहां तो कोई डाउट? Diff in both of these as in property. RV, I'm not able to get your question. Okay. So सबसे पहला डिफरेंस ऑब्वियसली है, यू गाइस फिगर आउट द डिफरेंस. देखो सिंपल सा बात है, फंक्शनल कंपोनेंट, क्लास कंपोनेंट. पहला डिफरेंस क्या है? फंक्शनल कंपोनेंट आर जावास्क्रिप्ट फंक्शंस, राइट, बट क्लास बेस्ड कंपोनेंट आर जावास्क्रिप्ट क्लासेस. ये तो ऑब्वियस डिफरेंसेस है, राइट? Before that, what version function gets own component? How to send props in class component? Yes, we'll talk about sending props in class component. देखो class component पे probably there will be एक पूरा लेक्चर होगा जिसमें कि we'll talk about the class component, passing the properties, callback method हम लोग देखेंगे, जो callback की बात किए थे, right? Passing the callback method as a properties, and then life cycle method of a class based component. Cool. Yeah, how to, before that, Rahul, sir, before what version function gets its own his own component? Not able to get your question, Rahul. Before what version function gets his own component? Rahul, you wanna reframe your question? I'm not able to get your question. No one. Okay. Cool. ठीक है. So हमने क्लास बेस्ड कंपोनेंट, फंक्शनल कंपोनेंट का डिफरेंस समझ लिया, राइट? Cool. बाकी all the things are same. Okay. Something. See, it is also displaying the same hello, right? जो हमने वहां पे लिखा था सेम वे में ये यहाँ पे डिस्प्ले कर रहा है, right? Now, so at least we have seen कि we can write it as a class based component as well, right? बाकी सब कुछ सेम है. It is a JavaScript class extending from React.component, right? तो React.component से कर रहा है इसलिए ये import लगाना पड़ा अपने को, ठीक है? Having this render method, right? Because this is one of the method that you need to implement or override, right? And that is returning a simple element, correct? Now, there are some important things about class-based component. जैसे हमने बात किया था, right? Class-based component were eventually meant to be little complex than the functional component, right? तो complex क्यों? Because of certain special characteristics, जैसे कि state. So state was something that was initially a special feature of class-based component. Clear till here? State property कि class-based component में क्या है कि एक special characteristic दिया गया था. Now function can also have state. Yes, that's what this particular line was blurred. So initial thought process जब develop हुआ था तो the classes were meant to be more complex and the functional component state मतलब क्या है? Simple देखो, state के बारे में हम लोग बात करेंगे, but state का simple सा मतलब है not the state वाला state का मतलब है तुम्हारे पास क्या प्रॉपर्टी है, व्हाट इज योर, मतलब राज्य वाला स्टेट नहीं, स्टेट मतलब my question was this, what state means? Yeah. So state means what properties you are currently holding, what is your current value, right? So in this case, the state will mean, right, the properties that you want to hold and what is the current value of those properties. As simple as that. So initially, the functional component were meant to be simple. The class-based component were meant to be little complex. And one of the complex thing with the class-based component was using the state. And later point of before what version function gets its own state. I don't remember the version number, but it was eventually developed in such a way that the function got some properties, state, and then support for the hooks. And anyways, you don't need to go do anything with the React version. Which version got? I also don't have that number, right? Kis numbers after which version number it was established. But I'm talking about how it started and how it is today. So it started in that particular way. Now it is something like the state can also compete with the the functional component can very well compete with the class-based component. Interview asked after what version the state was implemented in functional component. I generally strongly discourage whenever people ask such questions that in which version this state got introduced and so on. Because eventually what matters is what's your knowledge, right? It's not about what past is, from where it got originated. You should know the thought process behind the origination. What was the thought process of initially not keeping that? But exactly relying on the version number is generally these are not the information that everyone remembers. And I highly discourage anyone asking this type of question. But yeah, you can just Google it and you can find the answer. Cool. So we have seen this simple class-based component. We are going to modify this class-based component to have the state, have the constructor method, and have the lifecycle methods and the callback method that we discussed, that you can pass the properties as the callback method and how it can eventually change the property at your end, how it can change the property at the parent component level. Okay. I'm not going to today I'm not going to take that particular thing because I have a meeting at 9 o'clock and only 9 minutes left, so I don't want to start with that. We'll start afresh with that particular concept tomorrow, where we need to go ahead with the class-based component. Once again, I'll just give the overview for the class-based component tomorrow. Start with the state, constructor, lifecycle method, and the callback method. So tomorrow we are going to see exactly how a React application is developed, how it actually works. Because till now, whatever we have seen, it's just a simple rendering. Now the actual interesting part comes when we have the lifecycle methods. That is because, and that is one of the important topics for any of the interviews, the lifecycle methods. And then subsequently after that, we'll have the props and all. Default props will see the hooks and all, but tomorrow we'll focus on the class-based component, lifecycle method, constructor method, and all those things. Cool. Any question? I need to wind up today early because I have a meeting at 9 o'clock. So that's what I need to give it a hard stop. Cool. I have 6-7 minutes. Why we use lifecycle method. Tomorrow we'll discuss this exact point, why we use lifecycle methods. See, just to give an idea what lifecycle methods are. Name itself a state, like life cycle. That means in your entire life cycle, what's our typical life cycle? We generally born, we grow as a child, then we any extension in VS Code for React. There are multiple extensions. VS Code has direct support for the React, plus there are multiple extensions you can search on the React. I guess there are some debugger tools as well, some boilerplate code as well. Yeah, Prettier is one, and you can find multiple newer extensions as well. There is every time there is one or the other extension that keeps on coming, so you can experiment with those things as well. Good. So idea for the lifecycle method. So see, lifecycle methods are the methods that get executed in the lifecycle of a component. Lifecycle of a component, from component being loaded to component being destroyed or component being removed. What all methods are executed, those are called the lifecycle methods. Okay. And at certain times only certain things suits, right? Let's suppose if you'll go to club at, let's suppose 60-65 is, right? That's not going to suit you, right? Matlab, theek hai, ja sakte, you can go, but still there is a time for every activity, right? The same way, there are certain activities that need to be performed in a certain lifecycle methods only. You can't just mess around the code in different lifecycle methods. It can create blunder. That's what we need to understand. What is the thought process behind each and every lifecycle methods, and what code exactly goes into that. Cool. Cool. Any question? 2-3 minutes more. I'll take a harder stop at 8:59. And tomorrow we are going to go all the way for the class-based component. And tomorrow we are eventually going to do multiple things related to the class-based component. State once more. State I'll cover tomorrow. State, see, we have not used state anywhere. So when we'll use state, then you will realize what state actually is. For now, just to give an idea, state is nothing but to hold certain properties and what the current value of those properties are. And based upon that, whether to render the whether to change the view or not, that is getting decided. Just give some hint about my question, sir. Which question, Rahul? Rahul, can you type your question?